Steve White joining you on the Rural Radio Network. Our roadshow brings us to the West Central Research and Extension Center in North Platte. A lot of really cool research that happens right here that covers the west central part of Nebraska. They certainly do things on the beef cattle side, but then certainly on the cropping side is a very big focus of what happens here. I'm familiar with this location because I've been part of the TAPS competition the last couple of years, and I can go show you where my corn is out in that field. But that's just one of the things that happens out here, and we've got a great panel of folks who are going to be joining us today to talk about some of the work. So starting first, we've got Nicolas, Cafaro, Menza. He's with the cropping system side of things. Do I have all of that right so far?
Yes, well, good morning, Steve, and thank you so much for being here. Yes, I am an assistant professor and cropping system specialist, and within the cropping system, I work with different crops, corn, soybean. I do some peas, sorghum work, and my main two focus are nutrient dynamics in crops and also water use efficiency.
Very good. And next to him, we've got Abia, Katimbo. You're originally from Uganda, but you've been in Nebraska a number of years now.
Yes.
And you work in the irrigation world. And if you want to learn about irrigation and this Nebraska might be a good place to do that.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. So, yeah, I've been here for 6 years. I came as a PhD student. I wanted to go to Nebraska where irrigation is, and that was my passion. And then after that, I got into this position as an irrigation specialist. So my work is basically focusing on how we can better utilize the groundwater in the aquifers. You know, we have a precious, resource, which is
right.
the aquifer. So we want to see how we utilize it so that it can also help people in the future. So my work is looking at water use in crops like corn and soybeans. I know sometimes farmers, when I talk to farmers, they say corn is the king, but it uses a lot of water though.
Right. And next on the line, we've got Randy Lloyd. He's on staff here at West Central as well. And Randy, you've got a little different background. You didn't necessarily come from the academic side of things. You came from industry, but that's got to be helpful to you as you maybe see some of this in a different way.
Yeah, I think it does give me a unique perspective in ag, especially in western Nebraska. I actually grew up in West Texas, so very similar environment, a lot of the same issues that we're dealing with. My background is really pest management, so looking at weed control, insect control. I finished up a career with Bayer in their seed industry as an agronomist. So once I came on board here, I was able to sort of put all of that experience together, working with the researchers here, getting them connected with industry people, getting them connected with local growers. And it's been really a wonderful opportunity for me.
Well, very good. And then down at the very end of the table, Milos Zaric, and he says anything sprayable, he can work on doing a precision application of it. Is that right?
Oh, that's definitely correct. So we are actually working on a lot of different things, research and extension-wise. And pretty much on all decision-making that goes after the problem is identified related to the pest challenges that possibly they will be having in the field. So we do a lot of work with ground applications, air tractors as well, and as well spray drones, understanding a little bit more pros and cons about those kind of the specific applications.
Even spray drones. Well, we'll have to dig into that one more in a little bit. Let's come back here to Nicolas, Cafaro, Menza. You deal with cropping systems. As you mentioned, you work with a number of crops. Is that right? I mean, we're talking corn, soybeans, sorghum, even field peas. Did I hear all that right?
We even do some forage.
Even some forage.
So we work with some ranchers here in the Sandhills, testing different varieties and more obviously working on the nutrient part. So we have discovered some deficiencies, in some of the soils, and also, how much of those crops kind of export and how to balance those nutrients so you can keep up with the production and good quality for the forage as well. So we have a diversity of things going on. And I guess one of the key part is that we do research here in the station, but there is a lot of the research going on farmers and ranchers' fields. And I think that comes from them because they want to see the things in their fields. So we try to make it happen. And there is a big program in the university, which is the On-Farm Research Network. But we also do what probably I call more like research on a farm. Sometimes we work with farmers that have certain characteristics of the crops, and we go and we apply some treatments in there to see if we can either push the yield or even, make it more profitable or control some of the issues that they may have in their cropping system.
Are there any, if you had to narrow down a couple of 2 or 3 projects that you're most excited about that you've been working on that?
Well, I work a lot with soybean. So soybean probably is one of the main crops that I work with. And with that, we work in nutrients needs for high-yielding soybean, especially in irrigated. So that's one big project that we have around. We are working with water use efficiency of cover crops in west central Nebraska in collaboration with Abia as well here. So we have a project together where we look at the use of cover crops and whether they can improve the water use or not, and the trade-off with the yields. Then we have some interesting projects with yellow winter peas. So they are not common yet in the area. So spring peas are more common, but also not as much. But we are trying to introduce those yellow winter peas as an option for dryland cropping systems. And then all the work that I just mentioned with forage, trying to help all the beef business as well, and make sure that there is some good quality of feed and we keep up with the soil's health of those places.
You mentioned peas. Certainly this is corn and soybean country around here, and then some wheat. But do you see some benefits to exploring other options and saying, hey, if we could create another option, gives you another rotational option that maybe is a little bit different season, so different opportunities? Is it worth exploring and doing some research that it might not happen tomorrow, but it gives producers something they could be thinking about down the road?
That's right. I guess the big part is the economics, and probably is that one of the reasons why not a lot of growers are making peas, or probably corn competes very well with other crops. And now in the dryland cropping system, if you see the most common probably rotation today, that only has wheat, corn, and then there is a period of fallow. So during that period of fallow, farmers still need to control the weeds and pay taxes, and they are always looking to see if they can do something. Of course, if you do something and there is water use there, it will impact the following crop. But it's about to incorporate a legume crop in the dryland cropping system that is not very common right now in west central Nebraska and the high plains. Yeah. So that's kind of the main idea in the long run.
And you mentioned Abia, so let's go down to Abia when we're talking about irrigation. Mm-hmm. We're going to learn, I'm guessing, that this research does not happen in a silo. You guys work across disciplines and across areas to do things. And something like cover crops, that's one of the things I hear from producers is, well, if I plant a cover crop, is that going to impact yields? Is it going to take water that I want to go to my primary crop? And those are some of the kinds of things you're exploring. Is that right?
Yeah, so if I talk about cover crops, farmers are being pushed to try to put in cover crops in their systems. The thing is to cut on how much irrigation they can put on. So the idea is cover crops can be able to conserve some moisture, But then some farmers are actually concerned in semi-arid climate, like, western part of Nebraska. If maybe I put in a cover crop in my system, is it going to use a lot of water? Which means, am I going to maybe pump more water from the aquifer to actually irrigate the crop to have more profit?
Right. They're worried, am I going to have a deficit now for the crop that I'm growing, that I'm bringing to the elevator?
Right. And then, irrigation is not about just, putting on water. You have to look at economics, right? So whenever they turn on that pump, they're going to use energy. And to get the energy, you have to pay money, right? So they need to strike a balance to be able to see, okay, can the cover crop save me some water so that I can save some money on how much I'm pumping to irrigate. And then maybe just to add on some of the things I'm doing, so when I just started in this position, I went across different farmers asking them, okay, how do you irrigate? So some of them were telling me, I've been on the farm, maybe I'm a third generation or fourth generation. I saw how my father used to do it. I saw how my grandpa used to do it. And I'm like, okay, how do you know that, the crop is stressed? They're like, sometimes I get into my truck and drive around and see, I can just look at the crop and see the leaves. Are they curving in? Are they carrying? Or, if I see that, maybe the crop needs water. I was like, well, maybe sometimes, on a hot day, that's a fighting mechanism for the crop.
Right.
Sometimes when it's really a hot day, the crop is going to show stress.
Sure.
But in reality, you have moisture below the ground. So I was like, okay, there are some tools available that you could actually use to be able to track how much the crop is using, and then for you to gauge when does it need water. So something that I developed, I call it mobile irrigation testing lab.
Okay.
So I'm trying to provide, some of the existing tools that farmers don't know for them to be able to try them, kind of like taps, but now they're doing taps
Right.
in their fields, right? They're making those decisions when to irrigate based on data, because I was telling them, if you don't have any data on your farm, you can't know when to turn on and when to turn off
Right.
the pivot. So that's something I've been trying to do. I'm not only promoting the technology, but I'm creating awareness that maybe we need to rely on data. We need to rely on data to make more informed decisions. Because the overall goal is for us to be able to conserve, more water in the aquifer.
Right. Well,
Right.
And some producers, frankly, they live in an area where there are restrictions on how much water
Right.
they can use. There's also the economic component. There are any number of reasons why we want to make sure we're not using more water than we need to.
Yeah, and now, as you know, now there's some nitrate concerns in Nebraska.
Right.
So I've been also linking nitrates with how you're irrigating. I'm telling them, okay, if you're putting on too much than what the crop can take up, guess what? That water is going to go back into the aquifer.
It's going to leach into the
But
aquifer.
then it's going to go with the nitrogen, with the
Right.
nitrates, right? So those are things that I'm trying to look at, in this area.
And then I've talked to a number of farmers recently who are really excited then about fertigation, using that irrigation system to then apply that nitrogen and then maybe spoon feed it to the crop
Right.
at just the right time. It all ties together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And, thank you for touching on that. So part of that program, too, we are trying to see the efficiency of the systems. If you're going to do chemigation, if you're going to do in-season application, you have to make sure that there's uniform application of water, uniform application of nitrogen across the field. Otherwise, if you have some sections where the sprinklers are really bad,
Right.
you're going to either over-fatigate, still you're not actually,
Sure.
you're not actually tackling the nitrate problem, actually maybe putting even more fertilizer in the field. So those are things that we're trying. The idea is, how do we help farmers to be more efficient in terms of how they're managing both water and nitrogen?
Yeah, very interesting. We better move on down the road to Randy to talk a little bit. As we said, you came from the private industry, you came here. But one of the things that this center is known for, under the leadership of Dr. Julie Peterson, is working on the insect side of things, because we've got some pest problems in west central Nebraska, don't we? And do you have some involvement with that?
Absolutely. So obviously we're majorly a corn and soybean producing area. Corn has its share of pests. If you're talking insects, we basically have two significant pests that have affected corn for many years, and they've been the focus of a lot of research programs and continue to be. One of those is a beetle. It's the corn rootworm, western corn rootworm. So it attacks the corn in a couple of ways. It feeds on the roots, which anytime you reduce the root mass of a plant, you're going to reduce uptake, nutrient uptake, water uptake, and that can significantly affect yield. Now, the rootworm does that when it's a larva. So when it becomes an adult, it emerges, and one of its favorite foods is corn silk. So not only can you have an effect on yield from the standpoint of reducing inputs into the corn from the roots, then when you're trying to get your crop pollinated, if you reduce the amount of silks available, you're going to reduce the number of kernels that are developed on that ear. So it's really a kind of a 1-2 punch. And industry and university research has been conducted for many, many years, and it's a very, very adaptable insect. So everything we seem to be able to throw at it, eventually it adapts to. Now, whether that's transgenic corn,
Right.
or
Pesticide
a myriad of pesticides.
Right. Yeah, and we've learned, I think, that there's kind of no silver bullet. That
Yeah.
we came along with these a generation back, these traits that we had that worked great for a while, and nature adapts, doesn't it?
Very much so. And the second pest I mentioned is a lepidopterous pest, or a moth, and it affects the corn by actually feeding on the ear itself. and that's the western bean
cutworm.
Yeah,
And you have traps right here on site collecting those
absolutely.
things, don't you?
We monitor populations throughout the summer. That's very beneficial to growers in the area because they can access that data online daily. And the key with that pest is you really have to watch to see when your populations increase, because then you know those moths are laying eggs. Those eggs will eventually hatch, become larvae. Those larvae are the ones that are going to feed on that ear. And as with any insect that feeds in the ear, once it gets in the ear, it's very difficult to control. It's just an accessibility problem. So it hatches, it goes up and feeds on the tassel for just a little while and then goes down to the ear. So the window of opportunity is fairly small. And Dr. Peterson has been working on that project basically since she came here. And it's an ongoing project. We have a lot of students that have been involved in it through the years. And again, like the rootworm, it's one of those things that pretty much everything we've thrown at it, it has eventually adapted to.
Right.
So the quest continues.
Yeah. Well, let's move that microphone down to Milos at the end there. We're talking about precision applications. Precision is such the name of the game these days for any number of reasons, whether that's economically, environmentally, regulatory. There's going to be a lot of pressure, I'm thinking, to do what your work focuses on. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's completely correct. And that's a couple of the pretty much three main points that at least we are trying to work through research and extension to help actually out custom applicators, but as well private applicators that we have across of the state. So the first one will be to understand what are the needs to control specific pests like western bean cutworm. We actually had at least 4 different projects with Julie Peterson on this one to understand a little bit more about pros and cons of different application. We touched a little bit earlier on chemigation as well, but
Right.
we actually can apply some insecticides as well through chemigation. That actually we were trying to compare 2 different application methods in terms of their efficacy and efficiency as well.
Gotcha.
That's a big item. And then beyond that one, whenever we are applying different things, I always work with people to ensure that they are always maximizing their efficacy and efficiency, and as well to stay compliant with the upcoming regulations they are ahead of them. And there is a kind of a couple of the big items that they are currently ongoing that most people will get familiar over the next year. That is called Endangered Species Act. That is going pretty much throughout the entire United States right now.
So I think there's a lot of concerns. I mean, we hear about things like bee populations have gone down or these kinds of things. And whether farmers like it or not, there probably will be more regulatory pressure to make sure you're targeting those applications and all of that, right?
I typically just make people need to accommodate to regulations. Regulations won't be accommodating to the people. So yes, we are actually doing a lot of different items at least out there, but one of the first things that we are at least doing at least to have people be aware of what's coming out there. When we already started this one, we are actually doing quite a few programs with Nebraska Department of Ag as well across of the state for people at least to be aware of what's pretty much coming.
Well, a question for our panelists. We've already talked about this a little bit, but any other surprising ways, maybe surprising to somebody like me, of how your work interacts with each other, of combinations of people here who might work with each other that we might not from the outside. We already talked about you two. We've done some work together. There's some other examples of that you guys can think of.
I can at least start on that one, at least with entomology group, and I know that we touched a little bit earlier on spray drones as well regarding that one. So the big, right now, item that is ongoing, spray drone industry is really growing, and we can see almost, even compared to the last year, almost 2 to 3 times fold in terms of the acres that they are covering. So one of the big items that at least what people are concerned about will be what is the quality of the application that is happening out there, increasing the awareness. And the big item that at least what we did locally here, just beyond only testing the application, uniformity and everything else, dealing with corn, that's really difficult crop to at least get those droplets into the areas where they need to be. Randy touched western bean cutworm, and making that's kind of the really short period of time that you can control the pest moving from the tassel to the ear. We actually did conduct several studies to see at least how actually those droplets are getting deposited throughout the canopy, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and everything else.
Yeah. And Abia, I'm guessing your work overlaps with a lot of other people here.
Yeah, so most of my work overlaps with what Nicolas does because I'm working into a system, a cropping system. So some of the things that I'm trying to understand is how can we maximize water use in different systems, continuous corn versus rotational soybeans and corn. And I'm also trying to understand, how can we control leaching, based on, so if let's say a farmer does continuous corn for a long time, they're putting on nitrogen every growing season. What if they integrate in soybeans, right? Are we able to actually reduce on how much usage of nitrogen they use? Then the other thing is, I have a student that is trying to understand how can we integrate in different approaches, right? So basically, in terms of nitrate leaching, some people are focusing on nitrogen management. I'm focusing on irrigation management. Some people are focusing on cover. But then how do we have an integrated approach whereby we have all those three things, which a farmer does, right?
Right.
Farmer, if he's going to grow a crop, they're going to have a cover crop, which they terminate and then they grow a crop. And then they have to manage irrigation and then they have to manage nitrogen. But sometimes we as scientists, we just focus on, one lane, right? If you're dealing with irrigation, you focus on irrigation. But then having that integrated approach, I think that brings other people to be part of that collaborative.
Well, let's wrap things up with Nicolas then. If we're talking about an integrated approach, you're the cropping systems guy. You're the guy who has to integrate all this and help it make sense for the farmer, right?
Yeah. Anything that it doesn't fit in other place, it goes to the cropping system,
Exactly.
right? So I think we have several examples. For example, working with the forage group here in the Sandhills, obviously we were working on feed quality, production, and some things about nutrients and soil health. But there were some very big concerns about weeds, and I brought Milos along, and there were some recommendations and stuff going on there as well. So whenever it comes, other questions that go beyond what I am doing, always we integrate that. Also, I know that Milos also works with cover crops and the different herbicides,
Sure.
and how those cover crops integrates with that herbicide efficacy and controlling the weeds. So we do some work on that. With the entomology lab, for example, with the cover crops as well, in this experiment that we have with water use, I had a student that did part of a project on trying to track, potential pests in those cover crops and also natural enemies for the different, different pests that we can have in the area. So there is some good collaboration there as well. I guess the other part is that we here in the station, we work together on farming part of the station. So we do some recommendations. Milos does some recommendations with the herbicide, do some recommendations with the nutrients, and Abia works with the irrigation. So we work together and also on the farming of the farm here on the research station. And beyond that, we collaborate with other faculties across the state. So this is not the only research station. So we work with other research and extension faculty. And in my case, I'm part of two national groups. One with working with soybean, which is called Science for Success, and we do a lot of research and extension across the states. For example, I don't know who mentioned about, I think Abia mentioned about rotating corn and soybean, and we have one of the projects that looks at the nitrogen credits from soybean to the corn, so how much fertilizer you can save on the following corn if it goes through soybean. That's a recommendation that every state has a recommendation, but it looks like when you cross the borderline, it changes the recommendation, and there is nothing in the borderline that will change that recommendation. So we are looking at all the environments and soil factors that could change that. So there are collaboration across the state that helps to make those research projects, more applicable in a shorter time.
Well, very good. That was Nicolas, Cafaro, Menza. Next to him is Abia, Katimbo, Randy, Lloyd, and Milos, Zaric. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes, all fascinating discussion about all of the different work that affects producers that happens at the West Central Research and Extension Center. I'm Steve Weitz on the Rural Radio Network.